Alita Battle Angel? Or is it Angel Battle Alita? All that matters is, does it work? And is Happy Death Day to You any good? And is Happy Death Day to You any good? I feel like I'm repeating myself. That and more on this episode of The Real Review. So stay tuned.
Welcome to The Real Review.
Welcome to The Real Review, sponsored by Parametric and Lazy Ape Studios, where you get some of the latest happenings, real thoughts, and perspectives in the world of film and television. I'm here with Matt. Thank you for saving me. Hey. Who am I today, Matt? I'm sorry.
That's an inside joke.
That's a little bit of an inside
one of the
joke.
films.
One of the films that we saw.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to spoil which or how or when or where. But who am I today, Matt?
I'm here with Joel Gigantic Eyes Cunningham.
Oh, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I guess I still am trying to figure out the purpose of the giant eyes beyond the fact that it just made them look cuter. I think that's like maybe
it's like a Beanie Baby.
It's like James Cameron's thing now. He's like, I've got big eyes on my characters.
Well, this is the second movie that Christoph Waltz has been in with big eyes like as a focal point of the movie.
Oh, that is true. Big Eyes,
the movie.
And then James Cameron. Maybe they felt like there was just too many big eye things between them to not include
But maybe
them.
we're just not familiar with the source material, and that was a thing.
Well, I mean, the source, the best that I can do, we'll get into this, folks, a little bit less, directly in a moment, more the review side of things. But, it's based upon a manga series, which became an anime, and everybody knows the Japanese, for the most part, if you're familiar with anime and Japanese manga, they always draw a lot of the times the characters with really big
massive eyes.
This stereotypical way of doing it. And it's come a long way since then. And I felt like maybe that's kind of the direction he was going in, like kind of trying to connect a little bit to the source material.
Totally plausible.
Yeah, but that was the only reason I could really figure it out, other than the fact that he wanted to make her look more sympathetic as a character or something. But anyway, today, folks, we're going to be talking about two movies. We're going to be talking about Alita Battle Angel, as well as a film Matt got a chance to see that I did not, Happy Death Day to You. So I'm excited to hear about that.
Yes.
Because you've had interesting things to say.
Yes, I do. I have interesting things to say.
Before we get there, Matt, why don't you give our listeners a couple ways to get connected?
Y'all can get connected with us a number of different ways, but you can start. See, if I just stay up here an octave higher, you hear it better. Is that how that works? No, anyways, so you can connect with us through our website, which is realreviewmedia.com, and that'll link you to all of our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff, at Real Review. Again, real spelled REEL, like film reel, and then also youtube.com/The Real Review. Yeah. And you can email us at realreviewmedia@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought about our review, or if you want us to watch a specific movie or something like that, we can get in there, just comment, ask us your questions, and we will be more than happy to answer them on air. Anyway, that's it.
Yeah. So, in case you're not familiar with the show, if it's your first time listening, just a quick heads up, kind of the way we do things. Matt tends to be a bit more of the fan perspective, more of the fun, the pizzazz.
Yeah. Pizzazz.
Where I tend to be more of the somber, serious, in the details.
Everything's not awesome.
Everything is not awesome. And so we put those two thoughts together to give you what we consider is a whole real review.
Yes.
And so that is our staple. That is our thing on there. That's our
That's
stamp
the sound effect,
of approval. Our real review is our two sides of the coin. So, and we'd love to have you involved, as Matt mentioned. Feel free to send us your thoughts and opinions. Today, why don't we get into our first review?
Let's do it.
So we're going to be talking about first Alita Battle Angel, since Matt and I had a big chance to watch this together, and it's kind of the bigger release, I would say. Real brief synopsis for this. A deactivated female cyborg is revived, but cannot remember anything of her past life.
Wow.
And goes on a quest to find out who she is, as one would most likely do.
Wow.
Directed by Robert Rodriguez. It stars a number of folks. Alita herself is Rosa Salazar. Christoph Waltz also plays a pretty big character in this. Dr. Dyson Ito. Jennifer Connelly is Chirin. I'm going to butcher his name. I always get it wrong. Mahershala Ali.
Yes, that's pretty close.
Thank you.
Yes,
As Vector. Ed Skrein as Zapan. Also, Kean Johnson as Hugo. I should mention him. He's a pretty big part of the film. And then there's a number of sort of antagonists that kind of are in and out, and as they die or move on to other things, are no longer part of it. So I'm not going to go through all of those, but definitely check it out. There's a pretty big cast.
Yes, it is big.
A lot of people I recognize, but a lot of people I did not as well, which I kind of liked.
Yeah, that's good.
sometimes it helps me to get into a movie a little bit better, especially when it's set in like another universe.
Oh, totally.
Where it's not like a recognizable face. So I'll let you go first. Why don't you share your thoughts on the movie overall?
Alita. So, this funny story leading up to this, I did not really think this movie looked that good from all the trailers that I'd seen. I had no interest in seeing this movie.
Do you mean just visually, or do you mean story and everything?
Everything. I just the trailers did nothing for me.
Yeah.
But I ended up, maybe that helped my expectation because I ended up liking it a little bit more than I thought I would.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was surprised, definitely, because it was not atrocious like I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
So the big thing that I am going to say about this movie is that it is entertaining, visually way better than I thought it was going to be too.
Yeah.
I will say this. I know initially when I had reviewed the first trailer that came out like 9 or 10 months ago or whatever it was, the effects weren't good. They were not good in the trailer. And I said as much on the channel. Yeah. And I tore apart for it. But guess what? They did not look good in the trailer, but they look fantastic. They had 9 months to work on the movie since then, and it looks really, really good. And they've done well. I think all the effects for the most part are really, really cool. My favorite parts, because I'm rolling on the positives here, effects, best part. I think some of the action scenes were really cool, very inventive in a sense where it did feel like kind of like an anime or a manga in that sense, and I get that from just watching that kind of, oh, this is cool. Yeah. I always love it when a character like gets power-ups and stuff like that, throughout. Yeah. And you kind of get a sense of that through this. It feels like a video game in that sense. I think Rosa Salazar was great. I like Christoph Waltz in this. I like their connection a little bit. I didn't like it at first, but then I liked it as time progressed. But yeah, I think for the most part, I did enjoy watching the movie. Before I dive into negatives, what are your positive elements kind of with that?
Visually, I thought there was some pretty effective styles choices. Camera-wise, they tried to do some stuff with it that was like a bit. I would almost say like mischievous. It was like
mischievous camera stuff.
It felt like, okay, they're kind of trying to take some interesting angles with this, and they did some effective, I think at times, slow-mo. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the visual style of the overall world as well for the most part. I will say one caveat to that, which I did not at all like, and it's actually a really funny thing if you didn't go through and do this when you were watching it the first time.
What?
The background actors
really?
any of the wide shots of the scene.
Was it bad?
Were horrible to me.
Oh, for real?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, I wasn't even paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, I would challenge listeners, I would challenge you as well, like go through and watch, and it's actually fun. It's almost ridiculous how bad some of them are in the background. It's like they didn't get any direction or coaching. There's like one part where like this guy's walking by in the background, and first of all, they all look like they're wearing like freshly purchased Gap clothes.
Oh, really?
To me, like there's a couple, like they'll throw in one or two people that kind of have a little bit of like shredded look.
Wow, you pay attention to these things.
Well, it stood out because a lot of them were wearing really bright, bold colors, and I was like, that's such an interesting choice because this is supposed to be this post-apocalyptic kind of world.
Yeah.
And why? So wouldn't they all have more like rags? And you're trying to show this world where like everybody's just struggling to survive,
and they're trying to make it up to solid.
Yeah, but like everybody's selling stuff and everybody's buying stuff in the background. And there's like this one scene where there's like this middle-aged man who's like overweight and he's wearing like khaki shorts and like a nice button-down t-shirt, and he's like standing on a street corner, and he's like standing there, he's like looking around awkwardly, and then this other woman comes around, and he's like, oh, hey, and there's like 4 or 5 scenes of that. There's like a scene where a guy, he's like a larger black man, overweight, goes by, and he like has this like look where he's like, what's going on? It's just, I don't know. I got caught up in watching the background actors, and I pointed out to the person I was with, and they started doing it too. It was a ton of fun. Now, that cuts out about halfway through the film because the film becomes much more solely focused on the characters and their story versus the whole city and presenting the city. So that only lasted like a little while. But I think overall, to me, you mentioned the visual effects. They were good. They weren't so good that I was like, wow, I don't know if I'm looking at something real, or I could still very much tell like these are visual effects of this person and of this like cyborg.
Yeah.
So I thought they were good. It wasn't so bad that it pulled me out of the movie,
right.
Which that's a good sign. But it wasn't like, oh my goodness, this is like I feel like that Alita girl's right there, and then they're like touching her and feeling her. So, and then there was times. Sorry if I kicked you there on the table. Can't see that. Yeah. There was times where some of the action would get a little bit too extreme and kind of crazy, and it was like I just wanted some more wide shots. Like, give me some more distant shots of stuff. But I'm trying to stay more in the positive.
Sure.
So, overall, I also really liked, and I know this is based upon a pretty cult popular manga series from the 90s, but I like that they tried something different. I like that this isn't like a story that's directly been told before.
Yeah.
We've seen little bits of these kinds of stories in the past, but I like, hey, we're going to try something that nobody's seen before and really go in a very different, inventive direction. So I like that as well.
For sure.
I'm a big fan of sort of sci-fi and post-apocalyptic.
Oh, that's my jam.
Yeah.
I love any of like what society might look like hundreds of years from now.
Yeah.
Even the little thing at the beginning of the 20th Century Fox, it's a 26th Century Fox.
Yeah,
or
I
something
thought
like
that was kind of neat.
Yeah.
Because it actually, well, if you're familiar with the manga, it's been revealed over time that this is actually set in the 26th century.
Yeah.
And they say that, I think, in the beginning of the film, right?
Yeah. They say something like that.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Anyways, I came out surprised. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I will say I do like the attempt at world building. They didn't dive into as much of the like lore of what was happening, but I did see some stuff that I thought was cool. There's some like flashbacks that Alita had that I thought were cool, especially towards the beginning half of the movie. And I appreciated that. I think Rosa Salazar, she did motion capture, so kind of like the equivalent of what Andy Serkis did in the Planet of the Apes movies for that role. So I thought that was kind of cool. I will say, I think the dialogue was laughable at times.
Yeah, it was pretty rough.
Yeah. There was literally a time, and this is my Chris Traeger voice, literally some really bad dialogue
with the hand, literally.
Yes, literally. And I did not think that we got the strongest acting from what's the guy's name who
Christoph?
played? No, Christoph. I thought he was fine.
Zadik or Zapan?
No. Oh, Kian Johnson.
Oh, okay.
Kian Johnson.
Kian Johnson.
I didn't think we got the best acting from him.
Yeah.
He did fine other times, but there's a couple times like,
I agree with you there. I'm not trying to interrupt. I felt like a lot of Christoph Waltz felt very wooden in a lot of it, and he'd have these moments where he would like break out into this like really intense scene.
He has a rocket axe, guys. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. But I felt like most of the people in this felt very somber, very quiet, and kind of like, I don't know if you're familiar with Robert Rodriguez, that's kind of his style. Like if you watch Sin City, everybody in there's like really, and it worked for that movie. But this movie, the only character that really seemed to be emoting was Alita. And it kind of was a weird dichotomy at times.
I feel like she carries the movie as far as like, and here's the thing that I liked about it, and I think maybe it's just because I'm a dad, but I was able to connect with Alita right away. And I always say this all the time, your movie is going to have more of an impact on me, and I will be more inclined to like it if I can connect with the characters.
Yeah.
And I connected with her right away because she has this like childlikeness about herself that I was like, oh, this is kind of like endearing, especially towards the beginning. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And she's really learning some of these things. And I really appreciated a lot of times that in these types of films and stories is there's this like huge rift between the dad and the daughter that happens, and they didn't stretch that out for too long. I felt like they closed that up. They that wasn't the primary like conflict in her personal life.
Well, and that wasn't a part of the. I'm not going to get too much into. I don't know too much of the manga, but I know some of it.
I know zero of the manga, so I'm just basing it off the movie.
Yeah, it really wasn't about that in the original. It was much more. They kind of added that element to, I think, bring added depth to Christoph Waltz's character and add some tension there.
Yeah.
That it was because she's in the manga. She's actually named after a cat.
Oh, okay. Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's like completely
That's funny.
Sort of different. And it's talked about like, why would you name her after your cat? Which was a male cat that like died right before he found her. So it's like, it's a different story. I kind of in a way got it, but it felt a little bit manipulated to me. Yeah. I'm like, you can just make her have like, she just came from nowhere. She's not connected to Christoph Waltz. And just because of the interest that he had in her and the kindness of his heart, he decided to help her.
Yeah.
That was kind of another thing about his character. It was like, everything about him was like, everything was just given to him. It was like super simple with her.
Yeah.
It's like he just found her and they just hooked up this body and then he did like a little bit of work on her. And I'm like, I wanted to see this to be like, he put in effort, he put in a struggle. And with him, it was more of just like, well, I found you, and I had this body, so I just connected you, and now you're like my daughter.
Yeah,
you know.
I feel like the some of the actors in this are put in there randomly.
Yeah.
Namely, some people towards the end of the film,
specifically,
and
they,
you can tell they want to make a sequel, and I think the movie's doing okay financially so far. So I think it's headed that direction.
Yeah. And some people might be wondering, well, like, where are they going to go with this? There's like a whole. So this was actually just really based upon most of the first manga series. There's 2 more that have since come out from the same author, and it's still running as of this day.
Yeah.
So there's plenty more content
for
them
sure.
to launch into.
For sure. And there's a blatant like, hey, this thing can go longer, and there's if we make enough money, we can make a sequel at the end. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I enjoyed myself. Okay, so here's the worst part of the movie for me. Not just the dialogue, but any of the love story stuff. Anything with that, I was not on board for. But other than that, I thought this movie exceeded my expectations. I did not go in with high expectations at all. They were actually very low.
Yeah.
But it exceeded them, and I was surprised at that element.
Yeah.
So I feel good that like I gave this movie no credit going into it, and then coming out feeling pretty decent about it.
See, I had higher expectations. I was hoping for at least a pretty good movie.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think I got that from
you were kind of on the opposite side of me.
Yeah, there's a lot of things working towards it being. James Cameron has been continually one of my favorite directors.
Yeah.
Besides like the Avatar stuff.
Well, he didn't direct it, but he did write the script.
Right, but he was like such a heavily big part of it. And I respect Robert Rodriguez, and I feel like he's a good, competent filmmaker.
Spy Kids!
Yeah. This film just was kind of, there was so many parts that I was just like, now why? Now how? Huh?
Sure.
What? I mean, the fact that she had some memory of some things, but she didn't of others. Like, she comes out and she recognizes certain aspects of the world and the environment around her, but other things she's just like, well, I don't know what a dog is, but I know what clothes are.
I was kind of taken aback.
I don't know what an orange is, but I know what,
Well, they explain that. I feel like they explain that in like where she comes from.
They haven't really explained where she comes from yet. Like
really?
True heritage of. No,
okay,
I mean
the stuff.
Yeah, we probably won't get into it too much, but there's a lot more backstory to sort of where she comes from and how she got involved.
I just made I just made a deduction that maybe that's why she didn't know about these things. Anyways,
right.
There was something else I was going to say about it, but
I can't remember.
I can't remember now because I got stuck on that tangent.
Yeah, well, and I didn't really like the way that it left me feeling at the end. I mean, it built up to this kind of big showdown, and it was kind of slow played out, but it built up to this kind of epic, big climactic showdown between 2 characters, and then it kind of just goes, and I don't want to say how it ended or where, but
saving it for the sequel, man.
I get that, but there needed to be some resolution to that. Because you're literally building up, like if you look at a story structure of like most films, the 3-act structure, there was no kind of, in a sense, ending to the 3rd act or like beginning of a third. Like they started the 3rd act and then they ended the film, and you can do that. Like if you've got like a Lord of the Rings or something, they've done that effectively in movies.
Yeah.
But you have to have a big enough, epic, climactic 3rd act that feels like a 3rd act to the film that resolves enough of the beginning of the rest of the film in order to feel like that film is like whole.
Yeah.
And it didn't do that because it literally was like all these things we've been building up the entire movie, and no.
Yeah.
Like, so there was some closure for certain characters. There was some closure for like the direction that she's going. Yeah. But I don't know. It just never felt like that was the driving, motivating factor of this entire film. It felt more of like she's trying to figure out her backstory and the conflict that's at large. And we finally get to what that is. And then we don't get the satisfying part of it.
I gotcha. So you just got to go into these movies with low expectations, man. See what happens.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I enjoyed it. It wasn't time that I felt like wasted. I enjoyed some of the special effects. I enjoyed the fighting. The fighting was all very like obvious where it was going to me. Like there was nothing about this movie that was like shocking except for maybe one slight aspect about it.
I love the first fight. Like, and you get a sense of like her power. I was like, that's cool.
Yeah. But we've talked about this. I'm never been a big fan of like one overpowered person that just like mops the floor with everybody around them. It lacks.
It's like the one, bro.
Lacks suspense to me. Yeah. Like there has to be this idea that they could lose, and it has to be more than to me just like manipulated by the script
Sure.
or the story. Like, well, we have to make this person lose now so we can give them this new thing.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So it just that lacked much interest from me.
What would you give it? What would you grade it?
So I'm going to give this one pretty low, actually. I'm going to give it a 70. So C minus.
Okay. So I'm a little higher on that. I would give it a 78, C plus.
Okay. Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say is if you like sci-fi movies, if you want to see something that's not like super intelligently put together, but has some intelligence to like this, like the world building and the design, and has decent to good special effects, like check it out. But I'm not like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for the next Alita Battle Angel to come out to find out what happens in her saga, because it just didn't do enough to connect me to the story.
So in the trailer, side note, there's this line that where the guy says, "You are the most human person I have ever met."
Yeah.
And in that, I cringed while watching it in the trailer. I remember I've seen it a couple times, and it's not any better in the movie.
Yeah. The dialogue was so wooden. There were so many weird parts, like the part where like she is kind of like flirting with Hugo, and she like looks over, I forget, to the girl that's in this, like one of her friends that she becomes friends with, and the girl like thumbs up her. I'm like, what? Like, where is that even motivated by? They didn't have like some conversation like, hey, I like Hugo, I hope he likes me. Funny. Like there was just constantly moments like that I'm just like, what were you thinking?
I didn't like the dialogue, but I enjoyed myself overall.
I'm telling you though, this is the last thing we'll say, or I'll say at least, and we can move on. But
do it. Go
through and watch for that first half, just the background actors. It's like an entirely different movie was taking place in the background. There's like there's like a scene where a guy's walking up to a table full of like merchandise, and the lady that's selling them is like gesturing boldly like beside his head so he can't even like see it how much they are. She's like $3, and he's like looking at the table. It's like the weirdest stuff.
That's so funny.
Yeah, just really funny. Anyway,
amazing. Okay,
Matt, you had an opportunity to see a second film.
I did,
and I would love to hear
your
thoughts
film
on
of a second film.
A second of
franchise.
a second. There you go.
Yes.
Happy Death Day to you. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Let's talk about it, because Happy Death Day came out in 2017. Didn't know what to expect of it. It was just a Blumhouse release. I was like, cool, kind of like a slasher movie, but Groundhog's Day. And I ended up really liking the first Happy Death Day. Mm-hmm. I think I gave it a B+ or something like that. I really liked it.
I'm trying to remember,
it was
but
fun.
I think that's right.
And I think what worked about that first one is it's like this thriller, and it had its like, thrilleriness or whatever you want to call it, thrilliness. Yeah. And but it was also really funny. It was like a comedy, like a thriller comedy. And so I was really excited to hear that Happy Death Day 2 was coming out, or Happy Death Day to You. And I came out liking the movie. I will say right off the bat, it's not as good as the first one. There is a repetitive nature to it that is inherent in the series now, but they explain it more. You get a little bit more about like why this happened to begin with, why this repeating thing is going on, who's involved in that aspect. And then you open up the idea, and they talk about it in the trailers, of like parallel dimensions kind of a thing. And so they get a little bit more sci-fi with it. I like that stuff. I think sci-fi is fun. So cool. I'm all about sci-fi. And I really, really liked it. In fact, this movie is funnier than the first movie.
Mm-hmm. They're really playing that up in the trailer.
Right. So they
comedy.
It's kind of morbid funny, like Groundhog Day was a little bit. They even go as far as to have like a montage of like death scenes that are comical, pretty comical. There's one of them in there that's really, really well done.
Yeah.
I was laughing out loud. But I will say, I liked everybody. The girl who plays Tree, I think her name is Jessica Roth. Awesome. She carries this movie on her shoulders. Carter was okay. I didn't care for him as much in this one as I did in the first one. Fee Vu, and I didn't even explain it. Sorry, guys. I totally forgot to go through this whole thing. But Happy Death Day to you. Tree Gelman discovers that dying over and over was surprisingly easier than the dangers that lie ahead. So she's having to relive a lot of this stuff. This movie actually, another thing I really liked about it is it went there emotionally, and I felt some like emotional pull. I was like, oh man, this is good. Like they did some really good things and some like family dynamic stuff there that I was surprised with. I felt the chills, and a couple of times I was like, oh man, that's pretty good. Some family stuff. It's just the one thing that I feel like that this movie lacked that the first movie had was the slasher thriller element of it. I didn't feel like nervous or scared. I felt like it was more of just a comedy suspense movie.
Like a mystery more.
Mystery more than an actual like thriller-ish scary movie, kind of like the first one was a little bit. There's a couple of times where you're like, there's, people are creeping around hallways and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's just the funny figuring out what's going on element of it.
Yeah.
But I did find a lot of enjoyment. It does take it to another level of potential absurdity, but I bought into it. So I think it's really going to rely on people if they're going to buy into that, for the people to go watch it. But I really think this is shaping up to be a pretty cool, what do you call it? It's not a trilogy; it'd be a duology.
Duology. I think it's a duology.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a really cool franchise that they're making here, and I'm sure they're gonna make this a trilogy.
Yeah, we'll call it a trilogy minus.
There's
minus
a stinger,
one.
so stay after. There's a stinger after the movie that kind of opens it up for a little
Edward
bit more.
Norton in it?
No, stop talking about Edward Norton. Anyways, I did really enjoy it. It's not as good as the first one. I had a lot of fun. The characters are fun in it, and if I had to rate it, I'd give it an 82. So B minus.
Nice.
So the first one I gave a B plus was a B minus, but it's still a fun movie.
Yeah, I actually want to watch them.
You need to see them. I think you'd like them.
Yeah, I like horror comedies.
Yeah.
Some of my I love. I can't think of the whole blah blah blah. Boomstick. Can't even think of it.
Boomstick.
Yeah, I'll think about it later. Yeah. You know
what are
I'm
you
talking
saying? No.
about? Series of films.
With boomsticks.
Yeah, with boomsticks.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The Dead, Book of the Dead, and
Dawn of the Dead? Some of that?
No.
Shaun of the Dead.
no, I love Shaun of the Dead. That's a good example.
Yeah.
I should have used that example.
Okay.
But I did not use that example.
Boomsticks.
Army of Darkness.
Oh, yeah. Evil Dead.
Evil Dead. There you go.
Yeah.
Evil Dead. Army. I can't think of the words. I'm a movie reviewer and I can't think of the name of the movies. Yeah. But yeah, Army of Darkness, Evil Dead 2. Specifically Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness are some of my favorites there.
that.
But yeah, cool. Anything else you want to say about that?
Highly recommend it. Check it out if you're into that sort of thing. And it was fun. It's a fun movie.
Cool. Well, a reminder, some good ways to get connected to us on the podcast here before we wrap things up. We have our website, which is realreviewmedia.com. Got ahead of myself. And then additionally, our Facebook, which is facebook.com/realreviewmedia. We also have our Instagram and Twitter, which are both at Real Review Media. We'd love for you to watch our videos, which are on YouTube, or Matt would like you to watch them. I don't really want that so much.
Joel doesn't care.
I just don't think you're going to... Just look at Matt if you do watch them. Don't look at me. YouTube.com/The Real Review. And last but not least, love to hear your thoughts and perspectives on Alita Battle Angel. Maybe you were watching the background extras and thought, hey, that is pretty funny, and you want to share your thoughts. Or maybe you saw... you have a better description for what a duology should be called.
Sequel?
Send us an email. Yeah.
Original and sequel.
There you go. realreviewmedia@gmail.com.
Duology.
Last thing I'm going to say, for me, I have my final thought here.
Final thoughts.
Final thought
Joel
here.
Cunningham.
I would have actually loved to have seen Alita Battle Angel be an R-rated movie. There was a ton of... I mean, it went pretty far for a PG-13 movie.
It did. Even John Wick, some stuff happened there.
Yeah.
Like a specific thing
Yeah,
happens.
and I mean, I know a lot of them are like cyborgs, so it's like not the same kind of violence because they're not like human, but it was pretty intense still. One person gets like cut in half.
Oh, yeah.
So...
the way they animated that
But
was
I feel
really
like
cool.
in an R-rated world, things would have been a lot grittier, a lot darker, a lot harsher, and they weren't really going there. They were trying to make this more of like a kid-friendly violent in a weird way.
Yeah.
Because
I liked...
like the blood was blue and, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. What were you going to say?
No, it's cool. I liked a lot of elements of it, too, and I could probably elaborate for a while on this movie. But
there we go.
Yeah, good
All right,
stuff.
Cool. Well, then, it's been real.
Bye. It's been real.